Okay. So our next candidate is John Moretti Jr., who's running for state senator, 63rd district. Please welcome.
John. Good afternoon. You can call me Jack. It's officially John, but my name's Jack Moretti. I'm running for the New York State Senate, District 63. That district is the whole entire city of Lackawanna, the whole entire town of Cheektowaga, and about 2/3 of the city of Buffalo.
Okay.
So who am I and why am I running? First of all, I'm from Lackawanna, New York, born and raised. I live in the house that my grandfather built in Lackawanna. I graduated from Lackawanna High School, eventually graduated from the University of Buffalo, right down the street here, the Main Street campus, South, they call it South Campus. I have a degree in architecture from the School of Architecture. Shortly after that, I became a New York State Trooper, and I worked for 35 years. Well, my younger son said, don't say 35, somebody's going to fact check you and call you a liar. I did 34 years and 10 months with the New York State Police, so I was 2 months shy of 35. While I was in the New York State Troopers, for 18 years, I was elected the union rep for the troopers. A lot of people don't realize, but New York State Troopers are state employees, and we have a union. And in that union, I was elected the Trooper Union President for 15 of those 18 years. I also worked as the Grievance Committee Chairman. I was the recording secretary of the New York State Troopers PBA. And while I was doing all that, I had to be in Albany quite a bit. And that's where I learned about the New York State Assembly and the Senate and how to work with them for police bills that we would try to pass and get legislated in and enacted. So I have a working knowledge of Albany, how it works, and how to work with both sides of the aisle. I am a registered conservative, and I have the conservative and Republican endorsement. Now you might ask, how is somebody from Lackawanna, which is Democrat Central, the old Democrat? I grew up with my whole family. My father had 10 kids in his family. They were not rich by any means. And it was the working class labor of the Bethlehem Steel Plant, Republic Steel, Shenango Steel, Hannah Furnace. Those were the people I grew up with. Labor, the old JFK Democrat, which I grew up with. I became a conservative when I was around 22, 23 years old. I was asked to be a committeeman in the Conservative Party. They were starting that party up, a man by the name of Billy Delmont. Mr. Delmont just told my father, hey, we're switching your son. I came home, they switched me. I said, what am I switched to? A conservative. What's that? I don't know. Anyway, we became part of the Democrat Party. We pretty much cross-endorsed conservative and Democrat. And I remained a conservative for about 40 some years. Well, here we are. And that's who I am. And 40 some years later, why am I running? Well, I was retired for 5 years. I've been watching what's going on in New York State. I was approached to run for this Senate position. And after about 2 weeks of considering that, I was told by my sons, in fact, one's a state trooper and one's a swimmer at Canisius College, or Canisius University, it's known now. And they gave me the line I usually give them. If you don't do this, are you going to kick yourself in the butt for not taking this opportunity? And I said, you know what? I can't sit there with what I've invested in New York State. I love West New York. I love New York State. I've invested 35 years as a New York State trooper. I decided to run. So here I am running for New York State Senate. I would hope to represent all the people, whether it's a Democrat issue, a Republican issue, conservative issue. If it's an issue for the citizens of my district, it would be an issue for me. Here I am at Western New York Independent Living, and I would love to continue the mission of the Independent Living in Western New York, and that would be to promote the ideals and the values of what's going on here in this building and in Western New York. I would love to promote what is needed to promote better employment opportunities, better education and training for persons with disability, a better understanding of the public, a better understanding of law enforcement. I've been involved as a law enforcement officer with many calls of emotionally disturbed persons, and there needs to be more training for law enforcement and how to deal with certain situations. And all this comes from funding. And I think funding needs to be supported in Albany for Western New York independent living. I think funding is the key to education, it's the key to training, and it's the key to employment opportunities. And we have discrimination laws in effect going back from 1973 and 1990, and these laws sometimes need tweaking, sometimes need additional amendments. And I would be honored to be in Albany to do that for all the people and citizens of my district. I've been told that sometimes there's a misunderstanding of law enforcement and emotionally disturbed people or people who have issues, whether it's a mental or physical disability. There needs to be more training for law enforcement to work and understand every aspect of persons with disabilities. So again, I'd be honored to represent this district in Albany, and I'd be happy to take any questions from you folks. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Maura Kelly. I'm a behavioral liaison. In 2021, the Buffalo Police somehow had some wisdom to appoint me as a member of the Erie County Threat Advisory Committee, in which we meet monthly. I meet with the FBI, the private detectives, Buffalo Police, Homeland Security, and they present mentally ill people that are threats to society in their opinion. There's ample amount of discrimination, stigma, assumptions, then training on how to talk about us appropriately. And once they find out that one of us is in the room, well, like that, this just changes. How can the law enforcement learn from people with disabilities about how to treat us versus them teaching us how they're treating us? Like, how can people with disabilities run information and training versus the authorities that need it, which prevents us from community living and access and all that stuff?
I saw a term that just doing some background investigation on this whole issue. And I think part of the stigma is it's not the individual, it's the environment around the individual. And I think what you said, at least they reached out and they have you as a nexus. And I think that's a positive sign that they reached out and put you in that position.
Right.
But again, more funding,
Brutality.
more training. I think there needs to be more training in the academies and even continuous education and training. Even I was on the road after the academy for almost 35 years. We used to have in-service training and that kind of stopped. We need to continue that. And again, it comes down to funding for more training for police officers.
And diversity, the people of color, any color should be in on the
Yes,
community.
diversity, equity, and but disability, and to every situation is going to be different. And you have to understand from law enforcement, we get a call, we go to a call, we have to expect the worst no matter what, and then de-escalate, evaluate, and then take the appropriate action. I think there's another question behind you. Nope.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember right now.
That's okay. We'll come back. Yes, sir.
So I heard you say, so you're willing to support independent living centers that have increased to 25 million in the state budget?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would be supportive of that from day one. Absolutely. And then even with the CDPAP, they're trying to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There maybe needs to be some policing, some control over the fiduciary response but to get rid of all of them and go to one service, I think that's the wrong direction on that issue.
Did you just say it? Excuse me. Did you just, that you keep it going? Is that what you said?
No.
I like, no, the form that it's in and the form that you're.
I would keep it going as it is. I wouldn't keep this reform that they want to change that. I would not go with the change. I would keep it the way it is.
So you can see into the future, and I'm not trying to make any outward statements. I'm just trying to say, as elected person, you can see into the future how. Meaning, I don't know what I'm saying.
No, I can't. No, what I'm saying is I think how it's operating now is good.
But
I think there's.
contain it and keep it coached or keep it.
I think if there's issues, let's correct the issues. Let's not throw the whole system out as it is. I think it works the way it is. Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the disability rights and laws?
the disability.
Rights and laws.
Well, I know of the American Disabilities Act. I know even as far back as 1973, there have been anti-discrimination laws. 2006, I believe there's another, the Convention of Rights from the UN, and I would still even, the Constitution has the 14th Amendment of equal rights protection under the law. But it's never enough. We have to make sure people understand these laws and that we enact these laws on the general public who are maybe ignorant to how to handle some of these disability discriminations. Yes, sir.
You talk about training for forces and everything like that. Where do you come down on like 988 and sending out social workers and other professionals on calls for mental health?
Well, I'll tell you what happens usually on the calls I've been on. A lot of times social workers call us to go first to evaluate the situation. I have no problem going first. That was our job as police officers. We go evaluate and then assist social workers to go in and always stay there and be helpful. And again, more training to understand some of these situations and more cohesive training with social workers, how they respond to certain things and how we should respond.
Do you think it's wise for the police to go first on mental health calls?
I think again, I'm going to say every situation is different, but I think you first meet with the social worker. What's the case? Who's the client? What can we expect? What would you like us to do? Would you like us to go first? It could be their call. That's not a problem.
That's if it comes from a social worker.
Yes.
Mom is calling 911
Right.
and they have no social worker. This is the first time incident, but they say it's a mental health crisis. You know, it's a mom calling on their son. What's your feeling going, 988 you have to call now, but not everybody knows about that.
Right.
What is your position on a social worker being available to go with that trooper on a first time basis?
Oh, I would love to have that. I would love to have a social worker available. But again, as a police officer, first we get all the information we can on the call, all the information we can of the relationship, whoever's calling. And then if we can have a social worker, again, it comes out of funding, maybe we need more to be with us every shift, every day. I would love to have that. Yes, sir.
What do you think we can do for the mental health and wellness of our law enforcement themselves?
I'm glad you asked. I've been part of an employee assistance program with the New York State Police. I've helped out Buffalo PD on several occasions. If you can't take care of yourself as a police officer, you can't take care of the public. And it's a high stress job, high suicide. If you know about that, more police officers commit suicide than we lose in the course of a year on duty. And when I say on duty death by duty officer on duty, we lose more by suicide. So I've been, since probably 25 years ago, involved with employee assistance for the troopers and outside agencies. It's a real thing. And if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of the public.
This is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to introduce Cynthia Tamel, who's here for Diane Sayre, who's running for state senator, or United States Senator.
So I'm here on behalf of Diane Sayre, who's running for U.S. Senate, and she has another speaking engagement today. So she's in a different part of New York State, so I'm going to be her representative. So this is Diane speaking. Thank you for hosting this event, first of all, this candidates event, and allowing me to speak through Cindy Timmel, my Buffalo representative, who can also answer any questions if you have them. So the primary issue of this election, for those who are seeking federal office, and really for everyone on this planet, is can we avoid a plunge into global war, including nuclear war? This danger exists both in regard to Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Iran. The United States must always be a voice for peace and diplomacy, but there are too many people in Washington, including the incumbent, Senator Gillibrand, with close ties to the military-industrial complex, who care nothing about how many people die. The next major issue is the economy. Increasing production, building solid, modern infrastructure which can withstand extreme weather events, and making basic commodities like food and energy affordable by strengthening the purchasing power of the dollar. This second point is directly related to including Americans with disabilities as full citizens, equal to everyone else in the sense of having the possibility of contributing their talents to society as a whole. 2 years ago, Diane read the autobiography of Helen Keller and biographies of her by her teachers. As you know, she was left blind and deaf by a terrible illness as an infant. She was trapped in a horrible, dark isolation until her family found Anne Sullivan, who was a genius in her own way and nearly went blind herself trying to get Helen through college. Anne began by spelling words into Helen's hand, teaching her to write and use Braille, but everything had to be done manually. And Helen was brilliant, learning French, Latin, Greek, exhausting for the teacher. What's the point? Helen's family had the resources to hire Anne Sullivan, and Anne Sullivan was a remarkably dedicated person who unlocked the incredible genius of Helen Keller for the good of mankind. If our nation had a bold mission, like building 43,000 miles of high-speed rail, a new Erie Canal of sorts, or a bold plan to colonize the moon and Mars, we could not afford to squander the talents of so many people. The space program, with all of its breathtaking breakthroughs in robotics and medical science, should partner directly with organizations representing people with disabilities. Robot and AI technologies can allow people with physical handicaps much greater independence if they were to collaborate. An optimistic, forward-looking mission for our nation will lead to breakthrough in science and increase our productivity, which is how you wipe out inflation and raise the standards of living. This is why Diane Sayre is running for U.S. Senate. So I've shared with you her thoughts and her position. She, as U.S. Senate, is one of the people who would be in charge of voting, whether we have war or peace. And I've given you some of her ideas. I don't know if I can answer any of your questions, but I will try to the best of my ability. Whatever I can't answer, I would absolutely ask you to go onto her website, and I'll pass out some cards for you. And you can email her directly, and she would be very happy to answer. Yeah.
Do you know what her position is on the John Lewis voting rights bill?
I don't know that personally, no. But I do know, I will tell you that she is a humanitarian and she loves people, and she thinks that people should have access to creativity to have their full potential realized. And this is why I think she is someone that you could respond to if you talk to her in person or you went on her website to know what she stands for. Okay, I'll take that. Gentleman there.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just wondering about this because I'm actually surprised to hear her standpoint about having people like with disabilities be involved more. My question is, my question is, would she support an option for people like us who have disabilities but are really, really smart that normally would have been shunned by companies that would help us get to Mars and the moon? And are like have it, be able to build work for, what I'm saying, to say, hey, it should, what I'm saying to
yeah, I think I know what you're saying. How are you included into society? How are you included into being a productive part of who we are in America?
Exactly, because I've seen what could have been like even though it was a show, I've seen where America went to Mars and the moon, colonized it, and been successful. Why can't we do something like that in the real world? Why can't we?
Absolutely, and that's why she said, with technology, with robotics, with AI, you have creative genius. That's why she gave the example of Helen Keller, because Helen Keller is like one of her role models. She saw her difficulty, but she knew the genius that she was. And if you're not able, someone with a disability isn't able to create, that's not only a loss for you, but that's a loss for our society. And so she's saying, we have the technology, we have the new ways and apparatus to help people. You should be involved because you have the genius that has been yet untapped. And that's what she would be willing to fight for, to get you included into our society.
Yeah. I definitely would like her card afterward. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to share that. And then somebody had a question over here.
I guess my question is, you can answer this, are you one of our staffers?
Yes,
Okay, so have you ever had discussions, so will there be advocacy for more funding for peer services? Because most of us in this room are peer specialists. Would it be more, money for peer specialists? Will we be involved more, with, mental health crisis or any crisis call, like we did a big initiative, 988, and so like, would we be like the first line of office, and are you guys willing to invest in our professional, our workforce, our development?
well, from what we understand, you are not being given the full range of economic services that other people are. And I think that is a great disservice. So that would be the first thing, right, to look at, to make sure that, you know, the aides are being paid more. I mean, 17.45 an hour for an aide, like, come on, that's not good enough. So we need to get greater funding to help the American people. And this is the class of people with the, I'll just say, genius and creativity and potential that has been untapped. So we would like to address that, absolutely. And as far as the mental health crisis, I think you always want to do the good for the person. You know, what is the best for the person and for the people surrounding the person, you know, their friends, their family, their loved ones, you know, that the immediate situation, because sometimes those situations can get, can escalate very quickly. So you always want to know the best good for them.
No, I was saying, like, where we would include peers more, so when they create these multidisciplinary teams, I want peers to be like on the top tier of the team, like the first line of offense, not somebody you come to after, but I know there's so much value in peer services, especially in crisis. So a lot of times you have 988, you have the hotline, but there's no peers on the hotline, right? Why isn't it a place?
Right.
That's jobs.
Right.
More money for
Absolutely.
peers. I
Absolutely.
have peers on the hotline.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Would she support something of more equality? Because I work with something that's called Poor Peer Services. It's allowed to charge Medicaid for services. And I have personally seen them where our services are rated at half the cost, say, of the medical services. So that's where it becomes of where we're a valid service. We're a valid service. We shouldn't be regulated to like a bottom end service.
Right, and I think those are discrepancies that absolutely need to be looked at, so it's more fair and equitable. Yes,
As anti-war would, or.
peace, pro peace.
What is your positions on Ukraine and Israel?
So Diane gets a lot of intel, so she's, you know, when you're at that high level, there were opportunities to negotiate and talk, but the industrial war complex likes to fund the war. I mean, a lot of people can make money off of that. And Diane is pro-peace. Let's sit down and talk. Let's be reasonable. People's lives are being lost. She cares about humanity. She cares about all of humanity. Hers is a voice that isn't being heard. They're not allowing her to be on debates. They're deplatforming her. But she has a voice of reason and a voice for peace.
As a senator, how would you vote though?
She would vote for peace. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Here's Priscilla Brand, yes, and she is Diane's on the very bottom of the ballot, Diane Sarah's on the ballot.
We have our next candidate here, Christine Zarnick, running for state senator, 61st district.
Thank you. I'm Christine Zarnick, running for State Senate 61st District. That district covers all of Grand Island, City and Town of Tonawanda, all of Amherst, and the northwest quadrant of the City of Buffalo. I am a Western New York native, but I lived for many years in South Carolina. And when I was in South Carolina, I ran for my town council and won that election. And one of the issues that led me to run for that office was hearing from my neighbors that they felt they didn't really have the representation that they needed. And accessibility was one of those issues. So my thought is, if you're not a welcoming town if you're not an accessible town. So the area that I represented was the downtown historic district. So many of the neighborhoods there did not have sidewalks. We had crosswalks that were marked in the street, but these were not at signaled intersections. So there was no way for a car to know approaching that there may be someone in that crosswalk. So we got sidewalks installed. We got beacons installed to make those crosswalks safer. Our town square, beautiful town square, completely inaccessible. No curb cuts, and all the paths were gravel. All of that changed while I was in office, and that's something that I'm very proud of. I've been involved with an organization called the ARC, Alzheimer's Family Resources. I've been involved with them for 25 years, as a volunteer initially, later as a board member. And even though they're headquartered in South Carolina, I'm still involved with them as an emeritus board member. So no vote, but I do still advise that board. So their mission is to provide respite services for folks with dementia, but also to provide care to the caregiver. And that's something that I think gets overlooked in the disability community as well. They have also grown. They now train people to provide the same sort of services that they do across the country. And most recently, they have started doing law enforcement and first responder training. So again, that's something I'm happy to be involved with. In my professional career, I am an accountant. I've been an accountant for 30 years. So preparing budgets, analyzing financial statements, finding efficiency, that's been what my career has been. And I think those are skills that would serve the community very well in Albany. We're already the highest tax state in the nation, and we're not fulfilling all of our needs. So the approach I want to take is to cut some of the red tape, the bureaucracy, make sure that we get dollars and reallocate. Take a look at our priorities. and make sure that in the case of the disabilities community, that caregivers and service providers, direct service providers, are being properly funded. So that's my story in brief, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
What you planning to do for New York State?
How, can you be more specific?
So what are you doing now for your district you represent?
Oh, I'm not currently in office right now.
So what do you plan to do? Why are you being out?
Okay, I plan to, first of all, stay in touch with organizations like this one to find out what the needs are. Take a look at how budgets are being allocated to make sure we get the funding reprioritized and cut some of the bureaucracy, which tends to eat up too much of the budget, and make sure that we get more funding into direct service. Yes.
Hi, I'm a lifelong homeowner, not lifelong, since the 90s homeowner in Tonawanda. And in looking at services, how can the state or you help us access more services locally, like the senior centers in Esmond's or Road? Like the services are very far apart from our communities. Like, how can you increase transportation or help with accessible locations? You talk about accessibility, but it doesn't, like miles away, doesn't really.
Yeah, my understanding is that paratransit right now doesn't go far enough.
Right.
That would definitely be a priority. We have to expand that reach to get folks where they need to go.
Especially services in Tonawanda are not accessible for people that live in Tonawanda.
Yeah, yeah,
So maybe the
obviously.
state, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a problem, and that would be a priority. Yes, sir.
What do you plan to do differently than the incumbent?
I think his approach has been more along the lines of increasing taxes, and just given where we are with the economy and inflation right now, we can't do that. That's why I want to re-examine priorities. Okay, some things are getting dollars that I don't think should, and other places are being starved for dollars. So that's what I want to look at. Yes, ma'am.
Besides you networking with these bigger agencies, are you willing to go out in the community and talk to the people? Because there are people who don't utilize these services, that there's serious needs. I was checking earlier. Did you know that Derby does not have a soup kitchen? They have a pantry, but they don't even have a soup kitchen to feed the poor. And I know a lot of people there are rich, but there are poor people there who go unnoticed, which is sad. But even in communities where there's not a lot of places to shop and stuff like that, there's a need for people to eat a meal. Even if they can't get a pantry because they don't have the resources to cook, they still need to eat.
Right. Yeah. And, obviously, since I've been campaigning, I've been doing a lot of door to door, and I've met a lot of people and learned a lot about some of the needs that we have in the community. So, obviously, you can't knock every single door and talk to every person, but working through agencies like this will help. But additionally, any elected official should be holding town halls, and not always in the same locations. You've really got to move around your district and give people an opportunity to get in touch with you and let you know what their issues are. Yes, sir.
Some of the areas that you represent really are not happy with affordable housing coming to their areas. Where do you come down on those roads?
Yeah, that is a big issue. City of Buffalo in particular, because population is still about half what it was at its peak. That's left us with a lot of vacant lots and a lot of abandoned homes. I would really like to see resources pushed into infill. Okay, so rather than building new large developments, let's go into the neighborhoods and we lift up the entire neighborhood by getting those vacant lots.
What about the suburban areas specifically?
Yeah, the suburban areas have some of that problem, not nearly as much as city of Buffalo, but I still prefer infill redevelopment to larger, denser new development.
So you would vote against low income housing in the suburban areas?
Oh, no, not by any means. I would just try to direct those dollars to more neighborhood type development rather than very dense development. Yes.
Would Rome have any jurisdiction over expanding busing services outside of the city to the surrounding suburbs?
Yeah, those, that is not done on a statewide level. Those are regional. But that's not to say that a statewide office holder would not have influence there. So, certainly if I become aware of certain needs, I would then go and talk to the people who have the ability to make changes. Yes.
On your website, one of the few specific policies you mentioned was wanting to reduce spending on swimming pools in New York City.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So we've had a lot of trouble getting swimming pools going in Buffalo over the past few summers. And for people with disabilities, especially like muscular dystrophy or spina bifida, swimming can be extremely advantageous to help with muscle development, flexibility, mental health. So what would your policy be on public swimming pools in Buffalo?
I'd love to see more of that. And I know it's been a challenge, really since COVID to get enough lifeguards. So, that's one specific issue. But in mentioning that on my website, my point was that far too much of our state tax dollars are going to subsidize New York City, which is a very large metropolis. We here are not in a position to keep subsidizing them. We need our dollars coming back to our community. Oh, that's great. Thank you all.
Next, we're going to be going to Zoom for Nick Langworthy, 23rd District of Congress. So it'll just take me a minute.
You were pinned.
But also matches my lunch box. Perfect.
Participants. Perfect.
I don't know what I did. I can't say I did anything spectacular, but.
So what name we're looking for? There.
But it's Thursday nights. So I don't know next. Yeah.
All right, so we haven't been able to locate our Zoom participants, so we're going to go ahead and introduce Michael King, who's running for Erie County District Attorney.
Thank you. Shaky. So let me introduce myself again. My name is Mike Kane. I'm the Erie County District Attorney. I've been serving in that official role now for about 6.5 months. Prior to that, for 7.5 years, I was John Flynn's first Deputy District Attorney. I came back into the District Attorney's office under John's leadership in the beginning of 2017. I had worked in the DA's office back in the beginning of my legal career from 1994 to 1999, when I really started out my career, and loved the office. I met my wife in the office, and we ended up starting a family, and I decided that I had to go out into the private sector and support the kids that we were raising. So we have 4 kids. I'm a proud member of Western New York, and my kids are all now grown and off in college and afterwards. But I can tell you a little bit about what we do in the District Attorney's Office. I don't know how familiar you all are with it, but we investigate and prosecute the crimes that happen in Erie County. City of Buffalo primarily as the center urban area, and then all the towns and villages surrounding the city of Buffalo. We work very closely with the police. The police do most of the arrests up front. Most of the cases that we prosecute happen before we even get involved. We get involved after the police have made the arrest for the most part. There's some exceptions to that. Homicides, sexual assaults, and some of the white collar crime that you hear about. We are oftentimes involved in the very first stages of those cases and those investigations. But usually if someone gets arrested for, say, possession of a gun because they're in a car, that case happens at, in the middle of the night, and we don't find out about it until the next day when we go to court and we have a case handed off to us, and we then pursue with the follow-up investigation and the prosecution of that person charged with that crime. So we have 110 lawyers. We have another approximately 100 support staff that work with us in the office. And we also have, I'll share with you, we have 15 victim witness advocates. And I point that out because they are basically social workers by experience and by training and education. And they help us with the victims of crime, people that have been, either assaulted or somehow victimized in a crime. And they are often very, very traumatized when they come into the system, and they need help. Our victim witness advocates help them with any, claims that they may have for some financial loss. And they also help them really just navigate the criminal justice system. We explain to the victims what's going to happen during the course of the case and how we can help them. We really, in a lot of ways, we kind of hold their hands. Many of the victim witness advocates work with victims of domestic violence, for example, who are often reluctant to move forward with an investigation and the prosecution of a case. So, but in any event, I'll just share with you a couple of things that I'm proud of, the things that we've done in my last 8 years in the District Attorney's Office. The first thing we did was John and I, Flynn and I, recognized that we needed a presence in the community. We can't just do our jobs from our offices. That doesn't make any sense. The community that we serve needs to understand who we are, and we need to understand who they are. We have to build relationships. So we started a community engagement team. John actually called it the Community Prosecution Unit, but I changed the name of it because they don't prosecute cases. We are just there to be out in the community. I go to churches every week, every Sunday in the city of Buffalo. Our people volunteer. For example, Thanksgiving is coming up. We volunteer with a woman by the name of Elizabeth Triggs, who is a superstar in our city, and we help serve hot meals to the people that are in need during Thanksgiving. And our people are doing it on a voluntary basis. We go into the community. We help serve. We help clean up at a corner where it's a mess and where there's debris and trash. And our people are out there just volunteering their time. And we do that because we think it's important to build those relationships with the community that we serve, so that the people understand what we do, that we're human beings. We're here to help with the criminal justice problems that we have in Erie County. And it's been very effective. It's helped me, understand the real issues that the people of the community have. And it helps them understand the problems that we have with prosecuting crimes. One of the biggest problems we have is getting witnesses to cooperate on some of the more serious cases. And I'm sure you can all understand the reasons why, people are afraid to come forward. They don't trust the police. They don't trust us. And that's the one of the benefits of building those relationships. The second thing I want to point out to you that we did in the office is we had to redevelop and re-engage with the police departments. When John and I came into the office, a lot of those relationships, believe it or not, were kind of broken. We have to work with the Buffalo Police, the Erie County Sheriff's Department, and the New York State Police, and all the towns and villages. If we don't, we can't do our jobs very well. And, a lot of those relationships were broken. I really took the initiative myself to re-engage with all the leaders of those departments and to develop relationships. It's mostly about communication. If they don't understand, why we're making the decisions that we are making, then they're not going to trust us. Police aren't going to trust us or have confidence in us. And we need to explain to them the problems with some of the cases that they bring to us. If there's a problem, for example, with a stop, why did you stop that vehicle, or the problem with a search of someone's house, then we have to explain to them, what the problems are with the way they're doing business. So, and most of that, as I said, is about communication. It's about developing those relationships. We've done a really, significant job. We work extremely well together over the last 8 years. And that's why I think most of the police departments, actually all the police departments that have endorsed anyone, have endorsed me. The Buffalo Police Department, PBA, the Erie County Sheriff's, New York State Police, AMRA, Tonawanda, et cetera. The last thing I'm going to tell you is this. Our office is constantly having to adapt. We have to learn to adapt because the crimes change. I can tell you in the last 8 years, for example, we did not have the opioid problem in this community in 2016 the way we do today. It's changed drastically. So we started the very first opioid court in this country, in Buffalo, New York. And I'm very proud of that, because if we didn't deal with the problem that people with opioid addictions have, if we didn't deal with it up front, and they were sent home after being in court, they would end up overdosing and being and dying. And that was a problem that we never had before with other drugs like cocaine. And so we developed the first opioid court. It's been very, very effective. The other examples I'll give you is auto thefts. You hear about people stealing people stealing cars all the time. It spiked last year, but we took the initiative with the Buffalo Police and the other agencies to develop a different way of dealing with it. I'll just give you this last example. I merged our two bureaus, the Raise the Age Bureau, which deals with young kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and the Auto Theft Bureau in my office. And the lawyers now are combined, and we're able to really focus in a way that we weren't doing before. And so now I'm happy to report that as of September 30th, in the city of Buffalo, auto thefts are down 39% from the year before. That's a significant impact. And it's that kind of willingness to be able to adapt that we have to have in the office. And that's what I think my experience gives me. So in any event, I think that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, sir.
Mr. King.
Yes, sir.
Our jails, our jails, I would say by default, are dealing with a large number of individuals who have disabilities, specifically mental health. And all of these individuals come before your lawyers and DAs for the end of these jails. What are you guys doing to, I guess, address some of the mental health issues that people deal with, so we're not criminalizing people's illness?
Understood. Yep. So first of all, you are absolutely correct with respect to the jails. And I talked to the sheriff about this, and the sheriff has got an initiative to try to do something about that, because they don't feel like the facility that they have right now, supports the needs that they have in order to take care of the people you're talking about. One of the things that we've done, and actually we have a mental health court, I don't know if everybody knows that, in the city of Buffalo, and it's a diversion court, because oftentimes people that commit crimes, they have some underlying problem, whether it's mental health or drugs or alcohol or some other issue. In Buffalo, we're pretty innovative. I told you about the opioid court. We started the very first veterans court in this country in Buffalo, New York. It was started by a judge by the name of Robert Russell, who I actually started with in 1994. very smart guy. And we also have a mental health court where we send people that have committed a crime, and charged with a crime, and they have a mental health issue. We put them in the mental health court, and they have to go to treatment in order to deal with their underlying problems. And if they go in treatment and they succeed, then they get a very favorable disposition. Because really, the truth is, when it comes to this kind of thing, I like to say it this way, we're kind of in the business of trying to put ourselves out of business. I don't want that guy to come back to court. I don't want him to repeat and have another offense, 6 months later. And so if I'm not dealing with the underlying problem, the mental health problem or the drug problem, then I'm not doing my job very well. So, we're very proactive when it comes to this stuff. And I think it's it's effective. The judges that are handling those diversion courts in the city of Buffalo are compassionate, and we're doing it in a smarter way than we did in 1994 when I started.
What are you doing for the homeless individuals, and are you addressing how they label the homeless individuals on the news?
How they label the homeless individuals?
Yeah, because sometimes they be labeling they're homeless individuals, not whatever title you want to give these people that's in a park sleeping or in your building sleeping.
Yeah. So I can tell you what we do with homeless people. It's part of an initiative that we have with the Restorative Justice Program. I don't know if anybody here knows Dina Thompson. It's one of the community-based organizations that we work with. John and I started back in 2017. We are dealing with people similar to the mental health issue. If someone's got a homeless issue and they've committed a crime, and so they're now in the criminal justice system, and that's part of the needs that they have to address those needs, we work with the Restorative Justice Program to plug them in to a community-based organization that will help them find housing. So that's an initiative that we're on top of. Look, it's a constant effort that we have to be willing to address, and we are. So that's definitely an issue for us.
Are you increasing the homeless shelters this year?
What? Am I increasing them? I mean, I'm all for it. I support it. My role as the district attorney is to support those efforts. And yes, I'm 100% in support of, people shouldn't be homeless, especially in the winter in Western New York. So I support those issues, yes.
Okay, thanks. Yes, sir. I have a question. What are we doing to help the victims of domestic violence that are basically the reports are piling up? And they feel like their voices are not being heard. Police reports are wrong, that they gave their basically to the police officer the right testimony. The policeman messed up the testimony for whatever happened. And it just seems like there's a giant backlog, and there's an particular infighting between the crisis agencies. What are we doing to protect those victims of domestic violence that are in fear for their lives every day, that deserve justice against their abuser that's getting basically shot free and walking around town, and yet the victim is afraid for life, and yet there's nothing being done to,
So I can tell you that's one of our most important initiatives. We have, as I mentioned, we have 15 victim witness advocates. 6 of them are specifically designated under a Be Safe program that we have to deal with domestic violence victims. And we just got some funding. I don't know if you saw the announcement from the governor that's coming into us and to the Buffalo Police Department and some of our partners, some of the community-based organizations that, like the Family Justice Center, for example, that we work with in Hagen House, that serve domestic violence victims. It's going to be a significant resource for us. We're going to be able to hire more lawyers. We're going to be able to hire more investigators and victim advocates. And so it's a problem that exists not just in Western New York, of course, it's across the country, but we're all taking it very seriously, and we're trying to, work with our partners in those, sort of community-based organizations to continue to, get better.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How are you helping those with mental health issues to fight discrimination when they go to court? Because I've seen of where, yes, they struggle with their mental health, but it doesn't not raise to a criminality level. And since they sometimes don't get proper supports in other places, they're forced to go through lots of times mental health court, and then many times forced into mental health treatments where there was no, basically their rights are violated because they've not actually violated really any law, and they're then forced into treatments when there really was no laws broken.
Mhm. So, you know, if someone's been arrested and they're charged with a crime, and we recognize that first of all, they're gonna have a lawyer that's representing them, okay? Whether it's a lawyer from the Legal Aid Bureau or someone that they hired, privately. Their lawyer and our lawyer are gonna deal with the representatives from the mental health court and try to assess what the needs are. And we support those efforts. And if the court and the defense attorney that's representing this person are gonna say, look, this person would benefit from mental health treatment, we're gonna support it. But if someone is improperly charged with a crime, which I think is, one of the scenarios you're describing, we're not gonna prosecute that case. We're not gonna prosecute that person. If they're improperly charged, that case should be dismissed. And that happens in Buffalo City Court. It happens on a regular basis. Because those people that are charged with crimes are represented by good lawyers. We are not in the business of just locking everybody up. That's not the way we do business. All these diversion courts that exist, whether it's mental health court, DWI court, or opioid court, or the veterans court, they all exist to try to deal with the underlying problem because, we're trying to solve the problems that people have so that they don't come back into the system. They don't become repeat offenders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, folks. My name is Todd Varner, Chief Policy Officer. I think we're still looking for Nick Langworthy, but he might not be able to be with us for very long. And I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that that's a technical error on our part, not on him. So if he's not able to spend a lot of time with us, we will interview with the advocates and we will post that on YouTube. So I want to apologize and thank you for your patience.
Todd?
Yo.
Mr. Langworthy was popping up as one of the screens of the Zoom. So I think he's actually waiting someplace or other to come on.
I did let him in this meeting. So the idea was he might not have been able to stay. He had a hard thing at like 4 o'clock. So I wanted to apologize and encourage you to go to the Zoom because we'll do something for him. If he's not available, we'll go to Senator. Yeah, well, let's check to see if. Where is he? Yeah, Senator Gallivan. So let's check and see if Senator Gallivan is here. Okay.
They may have already done that. They may have to ask to rejoin.
That's all right. Go with the next person we have. I will.
Sure, somebody's taking a close look.
All right, now I'd like to introduce Jeffrey Harrington, who's running for Erie County Family Court Judge.
All right, thank you very much. I did offer, I knew Mr. Langworthy had a short time. I offered to wait and let him go, but I guess that didn't work out. He'll probably pop in the middle of me because I'm just family court is what people think. Just so you know, just family court is something I hear a lot on the campaign trail, but it isn't how you should think because it is a very, very important part of our legal system. And it is a family court judge makes decisions every day that affect the lives of children. And sometimes they're the more minor decisions of which parent you're going to spend more time with. And sometimes it's the very serious thing when CPS is coming to the house and wants to remove children or children, as Mike Kane said, that they think it's funny to 14-year-olds, they steal a Kia, they get to drive a car, nothing happens to them. And it's very important how you deal with them because you're trying to keep them out of the criminal system. And they have to learn it's not funny to steal a car. So it's a very important thing that a family court judge has to do as well as when the CPS comes to the family. Just so you know, I am a town judge in West Seneca. I'm in my 14th year there, so I handle criminal court in that aspect. So I know how to run the courtroom, but also West Seneca is a part-time job. My full-time job is I'm in family court as an attorney, and I'm doing the abuse neglect cases where I'm representing parents or children or the grandparents in those cases. So I deal a lot with CPS where I'm working with the parents to try to keep the families together. You're trying to rehabilitate the parents, you're sending them to a program, getting them, whether they need to go mental health treatment or substance treatment, and you're doing everything you can to keep this family together. And if the parents don't follow through with what they need to do, then you're trying to get grandparents, aunts, uncles, anything you can to keep the family together. So that's what I do every day in family court. To let you know a little bit about me, I've been married for 26 years. I've got 3 children. My 24-year-old daughter is a school teacher in Lackawanna, so she shapes the lives of children from a very young age. My 22, let's say she's 24. My 22-year-old daughter is in her 2nd year at UB Med School. She's going to be a doctor in 2 years. And then my 20-year-old son is finishing at Canisius College this year, Canisius University, make that. And he's going to law school next year. So I think I've shown I know how to raise a family, I know how to raise kids, raise successful kids. I know how to be a judge, run a courtroom, and I know how to be a lawyer in family court. So I think that's a really good mix, which is why I'm running for the position of family court. I heard Mike Kane touch on a lot of things, and some of the questions that he was asked, and we can kind of touch on them already, because I do act as a criminal judge in my night job. And, you know, you were asked about people going to jail and detained like that. And I can tell you, as a criminal judge in my 14th year, I never sent someone to jail because I was mad at them. You know, sometimes people do have to go to jail. Sometimes it's their 20th conviction and they need that. But other times people need help. And I send people to the mental health treatment court. I send people to the substance abuse court, the drug courts, and I do all that. And having this weird mix of being a criminal judge and a family court attorney, sometimes you're putting somebody on probation and the next day you're on the elevator with them in family court because it's the same building. And I think what's really important, 2 times I've been in family court and I've had people approach me and knowing, gee, I put them in jail at one point. I know that 2 times people have come up to me and thanked me. I got a big hug from this woman. I said, didn't I put you in jail the last time I saw you? And she said, yeah, you saved my life. And I got my child, you put me in jail, but let me go to a treatment program. I got in a treatment program. I got my baby back. Can you come to my graduation next month from treatment court? Because you're the one who started me on this path. So it's not just punishing people when you're doing that in criminal court. And the other one, sort of funny, he opened the door for me in family court, said, Mom, it's Judge Harrington. She's like, who's that? And he goes, he's the man that saved my life. So those kind of things happen when you have that combination of the criminal and family court experience. And that's what I think makes me very good for this position. So I saw from the last group, you guys have a lot of questions, so I'll just leave it at that. And do you have any questions? Or were they all for Mike Kane?
I have a question.
Okay, sure.
In terms of family court, what are you doing to help support single moms or unification of families?
All right, so I can tell you.
Or single fathers?
Single fathers, yes, good point. I can tell you that, first of all, I'm not a millionaire lawyer that somebody pays $10,000 to go do their case. I do the assigned work, which people are saying, you've been doing this for 25 years, why are you still doing the assigned work? It's because I think it's the important stuff. I could go off, I mean, with my experience, my trial experience, I can go off and do other things. I represent the people who can't afford an attorney. So I represent the single moms, the single dads. And like I said, if someone wants to hire me for a case because they're fighting over where the child has dinner on Thursday, I don't take that case. Okay, I take the tough ones. I take the abuse and neglect. I take the ones where CPS has come in and they're looking to remove the children. And I am working with those parents desperately to get the children to not be taken. If the children are taken, I'm working to get them back. I'm sending them to mental health treatment, to substance treatment, calling them, what are you doing? All that stuff. And sort of one of the biggest problem we run into is people, especially if they have a mental health problem, they're afraid to say it and they won't tell their family. And what happens is if someone's not fit to have their children for some reason, I want to keep them in the family. And I'm like, well, here, is there a cousin? Is there an aunt? Is there an uncle? And you find that so many people don't want to tell their cousin or aunt and uncle that I had my children taken away. And, because there's this stigma, they admit they have this mental health problem. So I work with them to say, look, keeping this family together is the most important part. You need to get better. You need to do what you need to do. Tell your cousin, please, because if your children go off to foster care, after 15 months, they could be adopted. You don't want that to happen. So it's relating to people that we can't be afraid to admit this mental health problem. You have to tell your friends and family because you need them to come in and have the family keep these children in the family while you work through your problems. So did I miss the point of your question, or did I get it? You got it?
In the area. Can you tell me a little bit about if you're encouraging this going forward, about what you're doing to help prepare grandparents, other family members, etc., for that kinship care arrangement?
Okay, so kinship guardianship, I think, is the best. They didn't have that when I started in family court 25 years ago. And it is one of the best things, these ways to keep the children, and you can go to the parents and say, look, your parental rights aren't being terminated. You're still going to be mom, you're still going to be dad. And give me these grandparents. I'll set these grandparents up, get them certified. They can be fast track certified for foster care. You have to be certified for as a foster parent before you can get kinship guardianship. So it's putting the grandparents in touch with the right people to get certified, the right classes, the right training they need so that they can come in. You also got to ask your clients, like, are there any special needs for your children that you need specific training for the grandparents to take care of your children? Because that's also an issue that comes up. But that is something I'm on the ground floor of keeping families together and fighting against CPS and getting them to relatives. So, yes.
How do you feel about family peer support specialists?
Family first, I met with a few of them. I think it is very important. And it's, the strange thing is, I've been doing this 25 years, and, when they first started popping up, and someone was like, oh, I'm the family peer support specialist. I'm like, oh God, what's that? And then you realize what they're doing for these people and what they're doing for the family. And it is, I had a case just today, the case I had at 11:30 today. The woman didn't speak English, and she had her family peer specialist, and I'm running around. I got 5 cases in the morning, and the family peer specialist is the one who has gets the interpreter on the phone. So I can go over in a contract with my client in the language Karen, and I can do that because while I was running place to place to place, she was getting the interpreter on the phone. And, I know I can, if my client needs to do something, I know I can tell that family care coordinator, and it's going to get done, because the clients, a lot of times, they just nod. Like, you have to do this. Okay. Do you understand? Yes. And they don't. And to have someone with them who's going to explain them and remind them 2 days later, that's what your lawyer said, and making sure they do that is very invaluable. And it's, in the beginning, it was, oh, what's this extra person doing here? And now it's like, thank God they're here.
What about family peer support specialists that work to support people who have been through the journey with somebody in active abuse and recovery? How do you feel about incorporating more of those family peer support specialists?
So you're talking about when someone's come through, you're talking about when their family members had the drug problem, the person with the drug problem, helping their family to help them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just navigating that journey with your family member, maybe educating them on addiction, kind of meeting them where they're at.
Well, yeah, because, whether it's addiction or whether it's mental health, especially you put something together, hey, you can keep these children if you have the help of your family, but the family doesn't always know how to help you. Although sometimes they really know, they don't know the words to use, but they actually know what settles the person down and helps them. So sometimes the family does that. But a family affairs coordinator who's helping the whole family to know exactly, oh, this person has this problem. You should try, getting a dog. You should actually, someone tell them, get a dog, get a cat, get a fish, something like that. Like someone who has encountered this and knows all the little things that can make a difference that, lawyers might not think of. So it's very important.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Trying to get myself out. I can't. Oh, it is.
The next candidate is Deborah Kilborn, who's Assembly 146 District. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Deb Kilborn. I'm actually a candidate for the 146th. This is my first time running. I actually can relate to all of you, as I myself was disabled less than 5 years ago. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. I was 140 pounds more than 145 now, that I weigh now. And I had bone on bone in both my knees. And I was literally just sitting in a chair all day, every day, asking people to get me water and food. And it was not good. When my mom died in 2019, I saw someone that I knew from the past, and he said that I should get my knees replaced. So I went to his doctor, who told me to lose 100 pounds before he would do the surgery. So I did that in 2020. I lost 100 pounds. And then in 2021, I had the left knee done in the spring, the right knee done in the fall. And then in 2022, I had a double hernia repair to add to all the other issues. But now I'm here, I'm healthy, and I feel that God called me out for a special purpose. By trade, I'm a realtor for 35 years, but I do have a degree in criminal justice and a very strong law enforcement background. I was auxiliary police for the town of Amherst. My dad was a captain on the town. And I have a lot of relatives that are in law enforcement as well. So I try to stick by the law. And just to let you guys all know, when I pulled in, there was a handicap spot left. And I have this, but I didn't use it. I parked on Main Street and came here. It's a good person would. So in any case, like I said, I'm new. I feel like God called me up for a special purpose, and I was praying on it for a long time. I joined the Republican committee last fall and found that there was an opening for someone to run. I didn't even know really what the job was, who was against, but I said I would step up to the plate because I feel like we all need change at this point, positive change. My mom was in a terrible nursing home. I didn't like it. I'm tired of private parties running these things. I really like your program here, that it's independently run and nonprofit. And I would absolutely support keeping your program going and offering, if I'm hired and elected, I will continue to offer support for this organization. Does anyone have any questions?
So your opponent was here earlier, and what makes you stand out above them?
Well, sometimes some people have some far off thoughts, and I try to stay middle ground, and think I'm a good negotiator as a realtor, and I think that I could offer a lot. I think I'm more outgoing than she is, and I think that I'm more involved, being that I've been out in the public a lot. I haven't seen her anywhere, and I'm not trying to cut that. I'm just saying I'm that kind of person to be out in the public. So I guess that would be the difference. Anything else? Yes.
The issues with the nursing homes definitely is a huge issue. Another similar issue is that in New York State, home care workers can be made to work 24-hour shifts, often without the requisite sleep and meal breaks. And it makes it more likely for injuries to occur on the job, both for the worker and the individual being served. Would you support legislation to limit or remove 24-hour home care shifts and replace them with a split shift?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great idea, and I didn't even know that that was an issue. Along with that, I would like to also propose a new legislation to have more training for those that are in the nursing home and to have more vetting done as far as backgrounds go, because I feel like we're not hiring exactly the best people we could be hiring. Anything else? Yes.
What would you do to support our agency? What would you do to support our agency?
Well, I would try to get you a grant because I believe that's what you guys need to keep running. So I absolutely would work on that. I'm new. I don't know exactly how you do all this, but I do know who I would go to ask. And I know that I would get so much money to give to people. And I believe I even came here for help myself. Actually, I did. I shouldn't even say I believe. I know I did. I came here for help myself. So I understand what this organization is about. And I absolutely would help you guys because you helped me. Thank you. Anyone else?
What other agencies do you know about besides Western New York Independent Living?
I honest that do this the same thing.
Do the same thing in a human service field. You know any other agency?
I do not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thanks.
Be sure. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Oh, I have bills magnets. I don't have pod cards, but I have bill schedule magnets. I'll leave them all up here for you guys to grab on your way out. Thanks.
You want me to grab it? Are you handing the whole lot? So no, that's a language of God. And they create something. I know that's awful.
Okay, so our next candidate is here. I'd like to welcome Sean Ryan, State Senator of the 61st District.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for responding. Have you folks been in a lot of interviews today? A lot of, that first one?
No.
By the 10th one? Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, everyone. So, a lot going on in New York State. Well, let me start. I'm Sean Ryan. I'm a New York State Senator. I was in the Assembly before I came into the Senate. Got elected for the first time in a special election in 2011. And I've represented areas in the city of Buffalo, Hamburg, and Lackawanna. And now in the Senate, my district has a city north territory. So it's west side, parts of University, Black Rock, Riverside, and then the northern suburbs of Amherst to town of Tonawanda, city of Tonawanda, and in the town of Grand Island. So sort of a mixed urban, suburban a little bit of rural, less than I had in my other seats. So let me just talk most recent accomplishments. In the last budget, the Senate achieved an increase in Medicaid reimbursement rates on top of the increases from last year's budget of $350 million for hospitals, nursing home, and assisted living providers. We also won $800 million of support for distressed and safety net hospitals, with $7.5 million just into regular New York State health care systems, and all from modifications to the 1115 waivers, Medicaid waivers. So it's using health equity, diminishing health disparities, and enhancing primary and behavioral health care. And then finally, it's not exactly the ILC bailiwick, but we want inclusion of a 2.85% COLA for human services workers, including 1.7% for target salaries for specific direct care workers. And that was on behalf of the direct care campaign. Throughout my career, I've worked in conjunction with the disability community. I spent a good period of my life as an attorney working for the Learning Disabilities Association, where I would sue school districts on behalf of parents and their special needs children to make sure they got the services that they need. And when I was at Neighborhood Legal Services, I did a lot of housing discrimination, including representing people with disabilities who needed modifications done to their apartments or their rental units. And we ended up in either state and federal court over that. So throughout my career, I've been working in and around the disabilities community. And it's my honor to be here today. So thank you so much. Just the time to ask me questions. Right.
So would you,
Yes.
so would you support the increase in the Independent Living Centers budgets up to 25 million in the state budget?
Yeah, I would support that. I've supported increases in the past, and I definitely would support that.
How are you on the CDPAP of them wanting to go to a single financial facilitator?
When we entered that deal, we were left with the impression that the ILCs were going to be taken care of separately on that. But it seems as not long after the deal was inked, they stopped the conversations about the ILCs. So we're going to have to bring that back up, but it's an issue we have to deal with because the current direction is not going to be good for this community, that's for sure. Yes, sir.
I know Hochul put in to increase aid worker funding, but then took that out on the last budget shortfall. Since we're facing $4 billion now, what are some of the things being done to make sure services and even aid services don't get cut?
Yeah, in the last 2 years, we've really been on this campaign of working with the O agencies, whether it's mental health or disabilities, to make sure that the people who work for these agencies, indirectly through nonprofits, are paid a wage where you can live in your community. Not only do we want direct and consistent direct care professionals, because that's what's best, but also we have to make sure that the people who do that work, they're not being taken advantage of because they have goodwill and they want to help people. It's my opinion that if you work your 40 hours a week at a job, you should, of course, have your rights in your workforce, but you should also have enough money to put a roof on your house, take your kids to the dentist, maybe go on a vacation. So we fell behind under many years of Cuomo on what we pay the direct care professionals, and we just have to catch up. And you see it now. Direct care agencies are in competition with Tim Hortons because they're paying more, and Tim Hortons' job is much different than the direct care professional job. So we need to embrace, from New York State's perspective, that we can't be a low-wage employer. We can't give contracts to nonprofits that are so low that they can't pay their workers enough money to live in the community. So we've been endeavoring to fix that, and we've been taking bites out of the apple. And this year, as I said, we came to just below 3%, and we're going to do it again. And our budget, PS, last year we finished with a surplus, And we put a lot of it in our reserve account. And then this year, according to the comptroller's report just from last week, the receipts coming into New York State are above what was anticipated. So this idea that, we have to start saving because we're gonna slip into a recession, so far that's not holding out. And, the rainy day fund, in my opinion, is making sure that we have enough direct care professionals in the community to take care of people. So that the rainy day money should go to take care of that.
Would you support a budget that doesn't include an increase for direct service?
I can't imagine a budget that would increase, because we've been able to get the last 3 years, really since Cuomo left office, we've been able to get a budget increase each and every year. The question is just, how much, right? So I met with the people from the Developmental Disability Alliance in Western New York, Donnie, last week, and, they're coming in looking for a 7.5% increase, which is about where we started last year, but we ended up just below 3. Math gets pretty daunting because you just think about Erie County and you think, we can handle that. When they stick to the rest of the state and the numbers do become big. But, we had a surplus last year. We ended with extra money and we put it into the rainy day fund. And right now it looks like we're heading in the same direction. So in my opinion, that gives us room to be able to take care of our priorities without having to raise taxes, without having to make any other changes. Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. What would you say for the first time parents that are finally putting the kids in the school and that would want to decide to either homeschool or send their kids to school? And this is it's a national hot topic issue about school safety. You not just have the threat, issues from the outside, but also inside school, fighting, stabbings and all that. What would you say to parents that are not comfortable sending their kids to public schools and they want to do homeschool? What would you say that you could do or that's being done now to convince them that public schools are a lot safer, being with the amount of the safeguards they put in place to make sure their kid comes home safely from school and then not going to end up, because you hear it all the time on the news. You hear that kind of sense of violence.
Yeah, you do hear that, and it's frightening for a parent. Parents have their choice. We know that, but we spent a lot of money in the last few years trying to make our schools safer, whether it's from an outside intruder, or you can't get into a school these days. It's so much different. If you haven't visited a school lately, there's a whole process before you can get in, and I think that lifts the confidence of parents. But then we have to also address the problems that we've locked into the school, and then how kids are treating each other and they're being bullied. And we've seen since the pandemic, like a high number of students need mental health assistance. They don't feel quite comfortable in the school setting. So we've really doubled down on the mental health services that we push right into part of the school day. It's not, we're recognizing your child should see a professional, go do it outside of school. More and more, we're pushing that right into school, but it's also normalizing it, right? For too long, we've stigmatized mental health, where if your kid needs speech or OT, no one tries to hide that. But if your kid needs mental health counseling, that becomes a hush hush. So we've done a really good job of pushing clinics, including mental health clinics, right into the classroom. And I think that helps, on many fronts, but it also really helps to reduce the stigma, is that, we should pretend you don't have a mental health problem, or you should be somehow ashamed of it. So I think we're on a really good track with the schools, but we have a way to go, like we do with everything else in America.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
What are we doing about establishing more affordable and accessible housing in this area?
So, housing's the issue, right? And the affordable issue is one we're trying to tackle. I had a couple very big budget victories where we got a $40 million pot of money to redo doubles. We think there's 4,000 units in the city of Buffalo that are owned by mostly elderly people. can't afford to make repairs, so they lock their unit and just go downstairs and, that's it. So we got a pool of money, whether it's gonna be a $50,000 or a $75,000 grant to bring your double up to modern standards. So we want to get more supply onto the market, but that money could also be used to make your unit accessible. And that's not a loan, it's a total grant. So that money can be used by either a owner occupied or non-owner occupied to make your units accessible. Then we also came up with a second pot of money to do infill housing on some of the vacant lots in Buffalo. Once again, $40 million. We're aiming at people who make between $40,000 and $90,000 a year. Right now in the city of Buffalo, 2/3 of families make an income of less than $70,000. The average house in Buffalo is now going for $2.25. So that means 70% of the people who live in Buffalo households can't afford a house. So with this infill program, we're making it affordable for the people who are in this $40,000 to $90,000 gap. And that'll include most people who work at places like Independent Living Center or any of the other human services or caregiving places. And that money could also be used to make an accessible house as part of it. But we've got a long way to go.
How are these resources being communicated so people know about?
So the first set of resources is the applications are out there. We've gone through nonprofit housing providers throughout the city. So we've had meeting after meeting with our nonprofit housing providers, and happy to say we've got 6 different grants that have been requested from different groups that are pretty much going to cover all of the city of Buffalo. Niagara Falls and 2 suburban communities also put grants in. So the word's out there. Yeah.
Did anybody in this, can you provide that information? 'Cause
Sure.
we work extensively with people and that could be a benefit, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. So
Yeah.
that can be published somewhere.
Yep. It goes through a nonprofit. So it'd be someone like Belmont or Push Buffalo would apply for the money and say, I want to use the money in this part of the city. And then once they get the money and they do the rehabs, then the units become available for affordable. So, we push it out there. There was a hand here first.
You showed up, so I have to ask, when are you gonna announce you're running for mayor?
Here's my answer, is that I am on the ballot in November for the 61st Senate District. I enjoy representing the people of the 61st Senate District, and I have confidence they're gonna return me to that position. Thank you for that question. It's timely.
I had a question because I remember I had someone I was working with where there was a gap in services because she was a elderly landlord who was taken advantage of. There's no law program to help seniors who are housing owners. So when you're talking about providing and making their homes into houses, you have to implement a program to help them, to protect them, because there was no way. I had to evict this woman's tenants myself, and I'm just the peer support specialist.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to do the eviction process. Not only that, I seen the program under, I don't know if I found it under Erie.gov about where she can get the apartment because they trashed her apartment where it's inhabitable. There's holes in every wall where I could have rented it out, but there's no funding for her to fix it.
Yeah.
She couldn't even sell it because she just took out a loan to pay for the roof. So these programs, I think some of these seniors, the programs need to be explained to them properly.
Yep.
And also, if you're going to have this program to rehab their apartments, to provide legal representation so they don't be taken advantage of.
Yeah, it's 100%. So we're going to get this program out into the community because it's community groups who are putting it out there. So Broadway Fillmore Neighborhood Housing Services, they get the grant that we want them to do. They're going to be canvassing in the areas that they do work in. Same thing with the Black Rock Riverside Group, the Seneca Babcock. So we're hoping it's very neighborhood based. But part of that, you're right, is we have to work with these people who own doubles, it's a stretch to call them landlords, because they might just live in the double they live in. But they have to be really brought up to speed on how to carefully screen tenants, how to make sure, you set up a process, but you get your first month's rent, you got your security deposit. But it's really important, because if not, people can get taken advantage of. And that's the last thing, that we want to do. But hopefully, if this program comes online the way you want it to, the woman you've been dealing with, she would be eligible for a $50,000 or $75,000 grant to bring her apartment back up to line.
Do you have like an ETA, like 2025, 2026?
No, that money's out now. So
Okay.
the groups any group who wanted that to apply had to have their application in by October 3rd. And the money will be allocated before the new year.
So for the Central Park area, where would someone go? Like, is it Center?
Yes, they would definitely know about it. Ken Bailey. Yeah, Ken Bailey will definitely know about it. They didn't put an application in, but they're working in concert with another organization.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Put it in for the university district?
That's the university that I was talking about.
I can't pull it out of my head. Somebody did up there, and if they didn't do it directly for them, then it was someone like Belmont who said, we'll do in conjunction with someone like Ken Bailey. That's the idea, because some groups said, we don't want to take it on because it's really, it's a lot of work. So you're gonna work with the owner of the apartment, help them figure out what they need to get done, get that work done, and they get reimbursed for it. So it's a lot of headaches. So some of the smaller groups sort of said, can we come in partnership with someone like Belmont, who's got departments set up to do that? But we need those smaller groups involved to make sure this money gets to the community as we intended to.
And is all that money,
You gonna cut me off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get the hook.
Yeah.
is all that money being protected from out of town landlords?
Yeah, so there's gonna be a group put together for every organization that gets the money. They have to put together like their own judging panel. So it'll be people from the organization. So if out of town landlord comes in, one of the bad Buffalo landlords, a millionaire landlord, the group will just say, no, you're not, this program's not for you. Yeah,
Thank you.
but that's a good question, because, those are the folks, first ones with their hands out, often the people who don't need it. And then the poorer, older people are sometimes reluctant.
Well, they have the resources to find out about the grants too.
That's right. Yeah, they have the resources, and they're not shy about asking for public money. So we're gonna make sure that that public money goes to where it needs to go to, and not in the pockets of folks who are up to no good. I've overextended my stay, but it was great to be here. Thanks so much. Thanks for the great question.
Now we have our last candidate for today, Kara Viscalia, who's running for Erie County Family Court.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here on the last one, so I'm sure you're all tired and sick of hearing people speak. So I'll try to keep this short. My name is Kara Viscalia. I'm running for Erie County Family Court. I am currently the judge in the town of Amherst, where I've been for 11 years. I'm also a lawyer, and I practice in family court, and I've been practicing there for 19 years. Just a little bit about me. I have been married 19 years. I have 4 children. My oldest son is 16. I have twin daughters. They are 13, and I have a 10-year-old son as well. I also have 3 dogs, and we live in Amherst. We have lived there. I've lived there my entire life. I went to UB Law School, where I graduated and immediately started practicing law in the district attorney's office for 3 years. And then I opened private practice, where I've practiced family law and criminal law for 19 years. Family court, if you're not familiar with it, or if you are, family court is one of the most difficult courts and one of the most important courts in Erie County, because it deals with our family and our children. And that is the most important thing. And I'm running because I care about the families of Erie County. I care about bringing equality and value to the court. I feel like every person that walks through that door needs to be treated fairly and equally. Mothers and fathers and grandparents and aunts and uncles, everyone needs to be on equal footing and given the respect they deserve. And I feel like I am the best person for this job, and that's why I'm running. In Amherst, where I've been for 11 years, I deal a lot with the substance abuse and the treatment courts that we have. Not sure if you're familiar with them, but we have a drug court, an opioid court, a veterans court, and a domestic violence court, where we deal with the underlying issues that are causing individuals to get arrested. So not necessarily the offense, but why are you in front of me? And I'm a huge advocate for our treatment courts. And we work with peer coordinators, and we work with substance abuse treatment facilities to help individuals recover and get back on their feet and get their lives back. And that's really important to me. And I want to bring that aspect to family court as well. It's really important to see the person standing in front of me as an individual and help them with their particular struggles. And that's one thing I pride myself in, is working on seeing the person in front of me and getting to the bottom of it and helping them with whatever they're struggling with. So I think those programs are really important, and I look forward to bringing my experience to family court. I do need to get elected, so November 5th, please consider voting for me. Can I answer any questions?
My question was this: what would you say to people that are, if they want to elect you, how would you tell them? What's the word? How would you explain to them if they're dealing with a certain situation? How would you stop it? How would you stop someone from like if they're already, they're already been told once to stop doing something, and they're, the offender keeps doing it, and the victim keeps finding the police reports, right? But the offender keeps offending, and they come in front of you. My question is, how would you assure the victim that the offender is going to keep doing this to a point it gets to a irreversible point in that spectrum?
Well, what you're talking about would be more criminal court or family offenses in family court. And I think it's important, like I said, to get to the root of the problem. Why does this person keep acting the way they're acting? Why do they keep reoffending or violating an order of protection or harassing that victim? And it's really important to talk to that person, whether it's through their attorney or it's one-on-one, to find out why they're acting in that way. Do they need some mental health treatment? Do they need substance abuse treatment? Do they need a program or some sort of support? And I think it's really important as a judge to be able to get to the root of the problem. There are some judges that just believe punishment or slap on the hand or move the case along. But for me, it's important to get to the underlying issue. And that's what I've been doing for 11 years, is really dealing with the mental health issues that we have, with the substance abuse issues. And those usually go hand in hand. But also, when it involves a victim, the domestic violence aspect of it. We mandate domestic violence training and schools. We mandate no substances if you're in our programs. And we try to hook people up with peer advocates and sponsors and get them into self-help and things like that, and try to work with the individual to figure out why they're acting the way they are and if we can help resolve that issue.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is Erie County a step up from Amherst for you?
It would be, only because Amherst is limited to the town of Amherst, whereas this is the entire county, and it's a different type of work. In Amherst, it's almost exclusively criminal, so all arrests that occur. Family court, it's a variety of things. There's youth part, which is juvenile arrests. There's family offense petitions. There's custody visitation. There's abuse and neglect. So it's a wider range of cases that we see. And it's obviously the entire county as opposed to just the town of Amherst. So it is a step up.
How do you support families that are coming to you, or parents that are coming to you with custody or visitation? issues, struggles?
So there's a lot of ways you can support those families. There's a lot of programs that we can hook them up with. I think that a lot of times, again, it's underlying issues. It's struggling with income issues. It's struggling with housing issues. It's struggling with being able to co-parent and talk. And there's services that we can provide that can help these parents or families coming in to deal with the struggles of family court. It's not easy to walk through that door. It's hard. And so we need to identify what help the families or the parents or the children need. And whether that is sending them to parenting classes, getting them housing help, getting them into programs that are going to, for example, hooking them up with after school help for their children, tutoring, daycare assistance, things like that need to be incorporated into it so that they get the support they need so that they can focus on healing their family or getting their families back together or working on co-parenting when they're in two different households. But it's really a struggle to, number one, make them aware of what services are out there, but number two, getting them hooked up with those services. And I think in family court, we need to do a better job of providing those services. We shouldn't expect families to go out and seek them. We should be able to provide them for them and say, here's a list of services we can provide for you. Here's a list of agencies that can help. Here's daycare assistance. Here's after school programs that come in and tutor or help with your children. So there are wraparound services. All of those things need to be provided more readily to these families coming into family court because they have enough on their plate. They shouldn't have to go out and seek all of these agencies and find it on their own. We should be providing those services for them.
How would you go about making that happen?
Well, first of all, training the attorneys. I think that we can have assigned counsel more readily what services are available for their clients. There are social workers that work with those attorneys, and we need to have those social workers attached to the cases quicker and more readily. And we need to have those social workers work with the families in getting them enrolled in these services. I think a lot more hand-holding is necessary, a lot more training for the attorneys and the staff that works in family court to make them aware of the services that are available so that we can then pass it on to the families. I think a lot of it starts with appropriate training and services for those who are representing these families, and we go from there.
A comment and then a quick question. A comment is that when you implement them services, because I have in the past utilized services, but they're so short term, 6 months, wrap around 6 months.
And that's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it is, because for some, when you got a child that's going through behavior problems, it takes longer than 6 months for them
100%.
to. Of course, I could be good for 6 months, but what you gonna do long term?
Yes.
So some other services will be in place, but I wanted to know if you're elected, because one of the issues that I'm hearing from a lot of parents is when it comes down to trying to raise your child and be able to take care of your child financially, is there something do you have in plan to do with the parents who choose to quit their jobs and not pay child support? Because I'm seeing that at an all-time high.
Yes, and there are laws in place, but we need to enforce them. If someone purposefully quits their job to avoid paying child support, it's called imputed income. They still have to pay what they're capable of earning. Now, there are consequences if you don't pay your child support. If it gets bad enough, you go to jail for 6 months. But who does that help? Because then there's still not child support. Someone's sitting in jail and they're still not paying their support. I think we need job programs to help people find jobs. I think we need to enforce child support statutes more strictly. I think we need to hold people accountable when they're not paying that child support, because who does that hurt? The children. And if you're purposefully quitting your job to get out of your responsibility, there needs to be a consequence. And yes, you can put someone in jail for that, but let's be more creative. Let's get them a job. Let's make things mandatory. Let's get them in job programs so we can get the money where it belongs, and that's with the kids. Because that's who it's hurting, really, if you're not paying your child support. A lot of people think I'm not paying my child support, I'm punishing my significant other or my ex. It's not punishing them, it's punishing the children. And that's the mindset we need to have. And we need to figure out how to get those people employed and how to get them to pay their child support.
Well, this is our job club.
Oh, there you go, okay.
You can sit in here and we can.
For that, when you're training the lawyers to put these services in place, will that include your services?
I think it should, 100%. We use those in Amherst all the time. We use peer services in our treatment courts because that's what helps. When you have someone, number one, either who has been through it or can relate to it or understand what you're going through and can help you through the process, that's a lot more effective than a judge saying, go do this. And I 100% believe that. And we use peer advocates all the time, and I think it should move into family court.
My business card for you. I assigned
Very
all our
good.
for mental health and substance abuse and family support for substance abuse.
Well, I'm a huge advocate of substance abuse treatment. I created the first opioid court in a town court in Amherst, and we get individuals into treatment within 48 hours if they want the help. And I'm a big advocate for treatment courts and continuing that on a higher level.
We are in all the treatment.
Yes, yeah, so.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
I'll leave a few cards if anybody wants them.
Everyone who can stand and ask for any questions.
You good?
From my.
Oh, I saw there, yeah.